Hi, welcome to our meeting. And just to let you know that we're recording today's meeting. So just get settled in. And Joe Hunter is here to welcome us. Thank you.
Okay. I'm trying to see. June, does everyone show up here? Looks like there's only a few people right now. Is that?
I currently see 13 people in the meeting.
Yeah, 13. Okay, including the group we started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started then. Okay. I can't see all of you, but again, thanks a lot for taking time to participate in our Restorative Practice Community Coalition. We appreciate all the support that we can get. And so, first of all, this coalition that we're building, I think everyone would agree that this is going to be the most diverse and can be the most impactful coalition that Seattle has ever seen, especially in regards to supporting our kids, our students in education. Okay. And so each of you have been out there working on restorative justice, restorative practice for some time. What this coalition is about is supporting you in your efforts. Okay. You should already be aware of, did you get the PowerPoint, June?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you bring it up then for that, for restorative practice? Okay. Next slide. Oops, yeah, there you go. Okay, so I'm not going to read through it, but basically the first part of this outlines the overall direction. Oops, no,
Sorry.
go back. Yeah. Okay, it basically outlines the overall direction of the Restorative Practice Community Coalition, which is again a broad-based alliance of individuals and organizations working with and in support of the Seattle Public Schools in their efforts to implement restorative practice, restorative justice in Seattle schools. Our mission statement is to advocate for racial equity by ensuring each child has equitable access to educational opportunities in a learning environment where students feel safe, secure, and where their concerns are being heard and addressed. And that's very important, okay, what we're talking about. Okay. For the agenda today, okay, first of all, we have 6 presenters that will each from different organizations. We have someone from representing students, 2 organizations representing students. We have someone representing the Teachers Union, SEA. We have someone representing the Seattle Council of the PTSA. And then we have other individuals that are representing organizations or just have a lot of experience in Seattle public schools. They'll each be taking 5 to 6 minutes to give a presentation and talk about what their organization is doing or their point of view in terms of restorative practice, restorative justice. Okay. After that, well, let me mention too that after the presentation, we'll allow for 1 or 2 questions, not comments, but questions. After that, we'll go into the breakouts. Okay, the first breakout that we have will be about 10 minutes. Okay, and we'll discuss the idea of having a restorative practice open discussion sometime in the months of October, November. And so that's the first question, should we have one? And if we do have one, what topics or issues should the open discussion address? So that's the first breakout. And so 10 minutes for discussion. Then we'll come back later and we'll do a group recap to the total group. Okay, and we have someone that will be, we have someone that will be taking notes all the way through. The next breakout, okay, will be, again, in terms of the time period and everything, about 10 minutes. Okay, then come back and recap. and discussing, okay, with the Restorative Practice Community Coalition, what should our next steps be? What should we be doing, and what are the priorities? Okay, and then the last thing, depending on how much time we have, is we're going to go ahead and just open it up. So any other questions that you might have, or any comments that you might want to make, then with whatever time we have left, we'll use that for the last just open discussion here. So the meeting is scheduled from 9 to 10:30, so we're looking at about an hour and a half to go through this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start with the first presenter. Okay, and so if you can bring up Miles.
Hello.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is if you could bring up Miles' picture and bio. Okay, so just to tell you a little bit about Miles. He was in the 8th grade last year at Mercer International Middle School. In the fall, he will be a 9th grader at Franklin High School. Okay, he is one of the founding members of the Seattle Student Union. Okay, which is a organization that fights for student needs, uniting students in the South and North End of Seattle. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Miles. And again, Miles, thanks a lot for your participation. Go ahead, Miles.
Okay, so
and June, you can take the picture down.
So yeah, outlining Seattle Student Union plans with restorative justice plans was what I'll touch on first, which I think we can work a lot together, especially educating more students on restorative justice, and slowly trying to get it implemented into more and more schools is, I think, a good first step. Helping students try and push for restorative justice in their schools with their administration and teachers for when conflict arises, instead of punitive measures. And then how can restorative practice support Seattle Student Union efforts? I think by showing up to our meeting dates, which I think Chayton will tell you, Joe, and educating more students on restorative justice, because most schools right now don't have restorative justice. And so I think just educating students first on what it is and how it can be useful. So yeah, and then I'm not sure about the date for the next Seattle Student Union exec board meeting, but I can message you, Joe, when we get that. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chayton. Okay, Chayton, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, sure. First of all, hi, Chayton, Executive Director of the Seattle Student Union. I think the main thing, and thanks Miles for covering this, is we recognize that restorative justice is very intersectional in the other issues that we address as well. So when we're talking about restorative justice in our lens, it means improving student outcomes, student mental health. It includes, making sure that when we have punishment in schools, that is, it needs to be more restorative and less punitive. And That includes going to, and what we'll do next year is collaborate with our partners at the legislature in order to push for, an end to, like we did this year, try to push for an end for isolation and restraint for students, and then also realizing that restorative justice is different for different demographics, especially our disabled students. It looks different in the way that we approach when we're doing restorative justice because the needs of students are different. And yeah, again, supporting our group. We're going to have a general membership meeting this month. And so would love to see people come out and support, just hear about our plans. We're going to be drafting, because it's the summer, we're going to be drafting our kind of policy positions for the next school year. And would love to see folks there. And I will send something via email once that's determined. But thanks so much. And thanks, Miles, for presenting that.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, and again, again, for the interest of time, we want to keep it short, but if there's one or two questions, okay, that you have of Miles or Shatan, any questions?
Hi, this is Cheryl Lynn. I love that there's a student. I'm the president of the Seattle Special Education PTSA, and I'm so grateful that there is a Seattle a student union. Do you guys currently have a student who's identified their disabilities on your in your union?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd love to be able to point more people your way. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to go to the second presenter then, John Greenberg.
Joe, 1 second.
Yes, I'm
Joe,
sorry. Yes.
Apologies. No, there are a couple of hands up.
I
Angela.
can't see hands.
No worries. No worries. Angela has a hand up.
Okay. Angela?
Real quick, how do you guys all envision collaborating with the existing community so you can help build capacity? That's my question.
Okay, Miles or Shatan, either one of you want to answer that?
Wait, collaborating like with Restorative Justice Community Coalition, or can you say that again? I didn't catch the last part of it.
Okay, so you're talking about the schools putting and normalizing restorative practices. How do you see the existing communities supporting that so that it's not just centralized in schools, but connected to the community? How do you see that?
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, thank you for the question. I feel like, we can't obviously like just practice, restorative justice in school. It definitely needs to be something that, we practice outside of schools. And yeah, what you said, like in our communities, like in our neighborhoods after conflict arises, instead of like calling the police for problems, like trying to use restorative justice in those situations, even outside of school. So I definitely think we, do need to we do need to also push for restorative justice in our communities and our neighborhoods and educate people who not just inside of schools. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And again, I can't see all the hands, so if I miss someone, please, let me know.
Yeah, thank you. No, I also had a hand up, and real quick, a lot of what happens with restorative practices is with us being in different spaces, in silos in a way, doing great work. My question is similar to Angela's, but related to, are we connecting with the folks in the district like Paulo Decano? I can't see participants, so I don't know if he's present, or Leon Caspi. Have you all had any contact with them, Chetan and Miles? Please and thank you for allowing me to ask the question.
I can speak mostly on that. We haven't had any contact with them specifically. We have had contact with the district about restorative justice practices. Most notably, we have a couple of members of Seattle Student Union on the Superintendent's Student Advisory Board, and so they collaborate with Superintendent Brent Jones and Ted Howard to go through, and we had actually a specific day where they went through restorative justice at schools, and so that was really helpful to see. And that's mostly our collaboration with Seattle Public Schools in that front.
Okay, great. Okay,
Angela,
great.
do you have
Thank you.
another question? Your hand is still up.
I'm sorry, I didn't take it down.
Okay, let's move to the next presenter then, John Greenberg. And John is the advisor for the NAACP Youth Council. He's also a teacher at the Center School. You know, John, from the day one, I'm co-chair of RARE, and from day one, John has been a tremendous supporter and resource for us with RARE, and then also a tremendous resource for us in this restorative practice community coalition. So John, I appreciate everything that you do. Okay, thank you. So John, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Joe, thumbs up that you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Joe, I'm so good. That gratitude goes both ways. For those of you who don't know the Washington NAACP Youth Council, it was co-founded. We launched in MLK Day 2018. It was co-founded with Rita Green, who some of you may know as the education chair of the Oregon, Alaska, Washington NAACP, as well as another educator, Sue Stahl. We co-founded it in 2018, in part because we were some of the people who were mobilizing for ethnic studies in Seattle Public Schools and found that the youth didn't know about ethnic studies in this area very well. And a lot of the support came from adults and college students. And so we wanted to make sure youth knew that there was better opportunities in education out there, and so we formed the NAACP Youth Council, which was has been a BIPOC-led organization, and ethnic studies has been one of our demands. I did put all of our demands in the chat that you can see. It's the second document that came through. But yeah, among our accomplishments, we were some of the people who co-wrote the initial school board resolution supporting Black Lives Matter at school, which initially was not supported by district leaders, but that changed when the school board passed that resolution in 2018. We played a critical role in removing a superintendent that many felt hostile to ethnic studies efforts in Seattle Public Schools. Working with 7 school board members, we co-drafted and wrote policy 1250, which puts youth on the school board as an advisory role. That was a year-long, a couple year-long efforts by the group. We have provided countless workshops at schools and educator conferences trying to push for racial equity and all the demands that you see listed on that slide, and including restorative justice. And we used to have a couple members who just graduated from Cleveland who were able to talk a lot about restorative justice because Cleveland is so far ahead of the district in restorative justice efforts. So a lot of personal experience was able to be shared through those students, but they have graduated. But that's still one of our demands. And yeah, some folks who've been in the district for a while might have seen, youth-led organizations come and go over the years. But we've been going strong, since 2018 is when we launched. And that's in part because we have some adults who are helping. I'm one of the youth coordinators. Virginia Bethia, who some of you may know, is another youth coordinator. And of course, Rita Green is always holding things down. So I put our demands in the chat if you want to learn more, but restorative justice is a big part of what we do in NYC. And I know there's a few NYC members, Ashari, Semi, and Fiona. If you want to add anything or say hello, this would be a great time. And of course, if there's any questions for any of us, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Any questions? Does anyone else have any questions? I can't see your
I
hand.
see
so-
Angela's name.
Okay, Angela?
And
I'm sorry to always have questions, but I do. With your council and looking at careers, are you considering integrating restorative practice and social emotional learning as a potential opportunity for career tracks so that we can normalize and integrate restorative practices?
Yeah, we, like the Seattle Student Union, we're going to be revising and revamping our demands this summer. So so that would definitely be something we'd want to think about. And Angela, if you ever want to come visit our group and talk more about that, that'd be great, especially, you know, before we get deep into the summer, just so we can make sure we're including some of those ideas. That sounds great. And I put my email also in the chat as well.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Great. Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Donald Felder. And Dr. Felder, first of all, he's a personal friend of the family. His mom and my mom have been we're best friends for a number of years. But he started off as his career as a fourth grade teacher and worked his way up to eventually become principal of the school. He has been responsible. He's been recognized. He's recognized the lack of educational services for students challenged by community. Do you have a slide, June? Okay. Challenged by community dilemma and learning disciplines at schools. He has a reputation for being a compassionate teacher, leader, advisor, coach, and so on. So, and he's also right now a member of the Baker Consulting Group. So appreciate you taking time and joining our group. So Dr. Felder.
Joy and happiness, everyone, and good morning. And I hope you're planning on having one of them fabulous weekends. And before I begin, I would also like to acknowledge everyone who has spoke. It recognizes the importance of community building. And that's where I see the foundation of restorative practices. Now, my perspective will be shared from a set of experiences that have been about 50 years in Seattle Public Schools, and not just as a teacher, but also as a parent, also as a principal. And what I've learned way back when is that we have a difficult time marshaling in initiatives within large systems. And so I say that because what I decided to do for the last 6 years is actually go into classrooms, specifically John Muir, Franklin High School, and let's see what other two schools, Leschi, Bailey Gassert, and there was one other that I forget right now. But I did so for one purpose, to understand the environment. So when I think about restorative practices, I don't see it as an individual act. I see it as a systematic issue. And which means that that there has to be inquiry as to why behaviors occur in such a way that people are punished for what they don't know, what they might be experiencing in relationship to a group setting. So in my work in schools, it really wasn't about what did an individual do to harm somebody else, so that we actually convene in some circles to talk about how we're going to be different and how we're going to appreciate relationships, but it was really about how do we change the environment within the schools. And so my focus was to work with willing teachers, not struggling teachers, not stubborn teachers, but willing teachers. Because what we wanted to do is to actually look at how we change the environment. Now I'm going to talk specifically about when I first joined, I had that 4th grade class. I was actually the 3rd teacher because a lot of harm had occurred within this classroom. So students were pretty good at moving teachers out of the classroom. Then I left there and went to interagency. Interagency was a school that was designed for children who were coming from correctional centers back to community. And what was learned is that comprehensive high schools, comprehensive middle schools didn't want these children. That's why I say it's a systematic issue. When, excuse me, when first started talking about this restorative practice, it was really about what are we going to do with these juveniles so that we can get them into these classrooms so that people will embrace them to educate them. That was the process. And what I learned is that the system as a whole had difficulty with that last point that I was making, embracing. So when we start talking about this restorative practice, we're talking about it in relationship to culture. What does the culture need to do, or how does the culture thrive in order to support those children? Now I'm going to recognize this, that the Seattle Public Schools does a really good job with a large number of children and populations of children. However, they do a very poor job with children who struggle the most in their system. And sometimes I think there's fear of those children, which gets right into the heart of restorative practices. And so when I'll tell one story and then be done. I'll never forget when I walked into a school and I saw children running out of classrooms because they feared looking foolish because they couldn't do math. They feared the relationship of how they would look in front of those who could. And you see that pattern from elementary school to high school. That's why some children in high school don't go to class. You see this fear within students who says that I don't have the advocacy within these classrooms to get the support that I need. So going back to this whole issue of how do we restore, and then I'm going to add this word, and maintain. So it's not just about restoring, but it's maintaining a culture that allows children to believe that they can thrive in their classroom. So when working with willing teachers, by the end of this year, we had students who could do the work and who would say to me and to their other students, I'm going to be kind in order for this student to thrive in the area of math. That's what I want to consider restorative practice. Now, I want to say that restorative practices I just don't think can occur without community building. I don't believe that teachers standing alone can do this by themselves. Community building has to be in place. And I have made this recommendation over and over and over again. I've said that community needs to work by the side of teachers. Schools need to work by the sides of after-school programs. After-school programs need to work closely with them central offices who have the responsibility of creating improvement in those schools. So what I would ask as we go through this process, from the superintendent, let me back it up, from the school board to the superintendent to those classrooms, there should be congruency when we talk about what restorative practices mean. There should be congruency when we talk about What is the relationship between SEL, social emotional learning, and restorative practices, and those courses that children are required to learn? What I'll stop because I see these looks. I say, okay, you're running out of your 6 minutes. So I want to say that what I learned, when people are on the same page, then this is what we can do, because there is great work going on. We can start studying the practices to spread. We should be asking this real simple question: what is it that we're trying to accomplish, and why? The second part of that question is, how will we know that change has actually occurred? That's the second part of the question, which means we will never know until there's community building in place. So thank you for listening. I probably ran over that little 6 minutes, but I just want you to know this is very passionate with me, because I've seen a lot of harm unnecessarily with children who face lots of societal ills. And I'm saying that the only way that correction will occur is that if we work together, and work together efficiently, and in a way that we say we truly understand why restorative practice is necessary, why social emotional learning management is necessary. When we put those dots together, then we will break those silos that keep our children in a place of harm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for those words. And we have time for 2 questions. So anyone have a question of Dr. Felder? Questions? Okay, great.
Once again, just real quick, respect Mr. Felder for all the work you've done over the years. I would once again, there's an office within the district, right? The Restorative Justice, it's not a coalition, but it's a group of people that are fending for this work. Do you have any contact with them?
Do I have contacts with whom?
This is Leon Caspi, Polo Decano, Jay Upshaw.
Yes, let me say
Okay.
yes. And let me also say that I sit on these committees that give people a lot of money to do something different, and I think that what the missing piece that I think I have is that I'm not really clear about how I should advocate for what we're talking about. That relationship is also with the superintendent. That relationship is also with Dwayne Chappelle. That relationship is also with many of the administrators who are responsible for this work. So the clarity for me is how do I work with community, given what I've learned over 6 years in the classroom through observation? How then do I advocate for community building around this process? That I can't do alone.
Okay.
Thank you, Doctor.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our next presenter will be Joaquin Rodriguez, and he is the he works for the Seattle Education Association, and he is responsible for their racial and social, and he is their racial and social justice coordinator. So, Joaquin.
Thanks, Joe. And thank you, Dr. Felder, for uplifting that community piece, because that's probably the first thing we're really starting off as a membership in SCA. And so I think, kind of as others have pointed out, we tend to do a good job with big initiatives, but that follow through and being able to hand off that work from one person to the next and have that continuous sustainable work has always been a challenge, especially for a district so large. I've heard folks ask, are you meeting with folks like Leon and Polo? We have, and we do that to ensure that we're pulling in the same direction. We really want to be in alignment. As far as what we're doing in SCA is really that community piece. One thing that's been, or two things I'd say, Jay Upshaw's uplifted, Polo's uplifted many times, is that when we do restorative work, we have to be able to restore to something, previous culture or community that you built before that. And so coming off the pandemic, we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge. A lot of educators have left our practice. And, that's a time to rebuild and build community and build with community. And that's been a primary focus of our union, is to have our key partnerships, our PTSA folks who are here, this space itself being one of those places. And so how we look to do this, or how we're looking to do this moving forward as well, is we've established our SCA PD network. And it's been very crucial that we're in conversations with our counterparts at SPS, not just Leon, but also Drea, the folks over there, as we partner in building that work, making sure that we're pulling in the same direction, that we're affirming the work with one another, because we both agree on this. Educators and management both agree that restorative practices is something we need throughout our district, and we want to see it grow. So our PD network is one opportunity to do that. Actually, folks that I've met through Restorative Practices Coalition have actually come and led us in that, including RPCC themselves, in our professional development, and that's something we're going to continue. Also, we're centering this work in our rep assemblies, which is basically when all of our union reps, our building reps, come together once a month in a meeting, discussing our issues, our challenges. What we've also centered is our restorative work and our equity work in that. So about 30 to 45 minutes of each meeting we have carved out to grow that work in our membership and build capacity. And I know it doesn't sound, as exciting as others to say that we're focusing on the basics, but I've also been told, by Jay Upshaw as well, is like, hey, let's not skip a step in doing this, making sure that we're doing it right. And so though it doesn't sound like very big or exciting, doing that internal work, building that community and building with community, and also doing our work together to make sure that we're able to create space as educators to really have our students speak and advocate with empowerment, rather than always having a punishment model. So being able to do that internal work is the most challenging work you can do, which is why we're trying to have that in coordination with SPS and with community as well. In addition to doing those two things, we're also partnering with Drea on our racial equity team support and launching our Len Hill and Advocacy Award mini grant program to help support racial equity teams as they find projects they might want to address, including adding restorative practices to their CSIP or to the building as a whole, and providing funding for those kinds of projects, if that's something that where the building is at. But that is also based on where each building is at in their journey at that point. I know, Dr. Felder, you felt like you might have taken too much time, 26 minutes, so I might gladly hand that back. But I just want to say personally, someone who knows your work as an educator at Franklin Beach and Washington Middle, and also has a daughter, John Muir, I just want to thank you all, thank everyone here for coming together to figure out how to do this work that we know it's been so important in the South End. I think, Dr. Felder, you spoke to the idea of kids going to, the model you said that was specifically interagency. As an interventionist myself, I know I've had to send kids from a comprehensive school that was not supporting those kids, where they did not feel seen or connected to interagency, with always a hope that we get them back as well. But that's one thing they've always named, is that in some spaces or across our building, there's maybe only one space or two spaces in a classroom or two where they really felt connected. And typically, those are the ones that really centered restorative practices, SEL practices, and gave an opportunity for our young folks, our scholars, to feel seen and heard and have a meaningful input and direction in the education they're receiving. And I think we can all agree that education has shifted in a big way since the pandemic. And that's what we're doing right now, is the work internally to be responsive to that. We see shifting demographics across our district. And we see also just, the shift in how kids are choosing to come to school, especially our multilingual kids, where they're coming from and the experiences they had before they've shown up, and hopefully having a population of educators that are ready to support those students when they arrive, with the tools and the skills they need to actually have a safe learning environment in their classroom. And I really appreciate Shaitan and others that have uplifted that. It looks different in different contexts. And so we're trying to be thoughtful of that as well, as we continue to build to our bargain coming up in 2 years. Multilingual services, special education services will continue to be at the center of that. Also, that partnership of what does it looks like to address mental health, we think restorative practices has a huge role to play in that as well, and we'll continue to advocate for that. And we're just so grateful that we've had just a really supportive partnership with district that is looking to grow these positions. And so we're excited for what's to come next. But as I said before, we are really focusing on our internal work and making sure that we're moving in a coordinated fashion with those that see the importance of this work so that we don't run off in a different direction than everyone else is running. We're all pulling the same direction. And I feel like that's what we're talking about, Dr. Felder. That's that system work that gets it done with people power behind it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Any questions of Joaquin?
Angela put a question in the chat. Who determines key community partners?
That's something we decide in our senior governance, as well as it passes through our board. And we design a partnership agreement. Actually, Joe's kind of gone through this process, and it's done though with thoughtfulness and intentionality. I think Joe's been looking for this since September of last September school year before. We finally have the paperwork in his hands and those kind of pieces. But typically, we come together as a governance team. You'll see a lot of partnering also with, Cheryl and I know from our PTSA, we try to keep regular meetings, making sure that we're holding space and understanding where we're at with community.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move to our next presenter, who is our host. And again, it's just a fantastic supporter of our RPCC, June Ivers. So June is secretary of the board of the Seattle Council of the PTSA. So June.
Hi, my name is June No Ivers. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Korean American woman with black hair and wearing my headset and my little red room office. I just wanted to acknowledge the space, and I want to thank you, Joe, for bringing us all together. I've worked in community separately with a lot of these people. Dr. Felder, I worked with your son, and we've had meetings with around culturally responsive practices as a teaching mentor with South End Stories and working with NAACP Youth Council and SEA and Seattle Council PTSA and Special Education PTSA. So I just want to acknowledge all the work that is being done here. My personal interest as a parent, I have a rising second grader at Hazel Wolf and a rising sixth grader at Jane Addams Middle School. And for me, I am a filmmaker, and my work came from doing this documentary that I did about education in the prison system in the state of Washington. And so seeing what the outcomes of what our systems do to children who are harmed made me open my eyes and realize we are still perpetuating the same practices over and over and over again. And seeing restorative practices being placed in, especially nowadays when we have a lot of families, this is what I've learned in council, is that we have a lot of capacity for people who are easy, that can pass through the system. But those who are furthest from educational justice, whether or not it's through their disability or through their race or socioeconomics, it is harder for them. And so that we should concentrate and use those purposes to focus on those who need more support. So at Seattle Council PTSA, we are aligned with Washington State PTSA and also part of the national organization, National PTA. And we are actually a largest child advocacy organization in the state of Washington. So we help build community in multiple ways, whether or not it's through back channels of our relationships with the district or with our buildings or with our parents, or whether or not it's through our local legislators. We help support and create communities where we can help advocate for children, especially when it comes to student safety. As one of my peers have told me, safety looks like different things for different people, whether or not, and especially COVID highlighted that harm can be coming from many different spaces. And right now what we're seeing with all the behaviors in the classroom is that we have to really get grounded into feeling what to get to the why, right? And so I see that all the time. And I know that we've centered a lot about restorative practices in high school, but I believe kindergartners can learn this stuff. I believe that 4-year-olds can learn this stuff. And I think also the most important thing is that the adults in the room, we learn this stuff so that we're able to model this to our children and to our peers and to our communities. So thank you so much for sharing this space with us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions of June? Okay. 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 The next presenter is Dr. Carter, Dr. James Carter, and he is the Executive Director of the Breathless Group. So, Dr. Carter.
Good morning, everyone. Let me apologize for my tardiness. Being the ED of a nonprofit means fundraising at all times, and that's what my morning started off with working with some organizations to help raise funds to continue to do the work. The Breakfast Group has primarily focused on stopping the school to prison pipeline by providing students with the opportunity to learn skills for success, college readiness, career enhancement, financial literacy. We hope to put our students on track to be able to be successful, whether they attend 4-year university, 2-year college, trade school, or have to go directly into the workforce. We have grown to the point where now we're able to look at diving into the restorative justice piece, reintroducing students who have been part of the juvenile criminal court system back into the school system, and then also finding a way to connect with organizations who are looking to do work to help people transition from the prison system back into mainstream society. That focus for us is in the form of digital equity and digital justice. People hear that digital equity and digital justice, and they think, okay, well, we want to make sure that every kid has a computer so that they're ready for school. But it's so much bigger than that. You know, we're in a society now where if you don't have connectivity, you're going to get left behind. Because in addition to being able to get information online, in addition to being able to get classes, to study online, there's so much more of our normal society that is moving to an online platform. It's getting to the point now, especially since COVID, where in order to see a doctor, you may have to have connectivity. In order to enjoy entertainment, you may have to have connectivity. In order to apply for a job, and in some cases keep or maintain a job, you're going to have that connectivity. We have so many areas in our communities that don't have broadband or high-speed internet. And then think about those who are transitioning from the criminal justice system back into society, coming out and not having any connectivity is one of those things that is going to keep them behind the 8 ball. Well, we're looking at partnering not only with other community-based organizations, but we're also working with T-Mobile, who is looking to help us find a way to provide services, free phones, and either laptops or notebooks to give to people who are transitioning back into the workforce from the criminal court system, and that's our inroad or our way to be able to play a part in the restorative justice and the programs that are going to be going on through this organization. We're certainly happy to be in the space with you. Certainly looking forward to getting to know and to work with everyone. Dr. Felder, it is so good to see you again, brother. We're going to have to find the opportunity to break some bread. Dr. Felder is one of those people that I have known for a long time through the internet. We've met in person one time. We've got to fix that. So looking forward, Dr. Felder, to hanging out with you a little bit more, but then also looking forward to meting everyone. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Okay, any questions for Dr. Carter?
Angela has a question.
Yeah. Angela?
Good morning, Dr. Carter and everyone. I wanted to ask you, as you consider the connectivity divide, are you also looking at the impact of how racism is also playing into that particular area, not only as the lack of access, but how technology also is being used as a consideration as another tool to up the level of tactics for racial divide. As you give that information to help people to automatically discern, have a level of discernment as they're getting the information that's being rapidly downloaded into their mental and unconscious.
So for our primary focus is we do mentoring for 9th through 12th grade. We're looking at reaching back and working with 7th and 8th graders on career connected learning, and then we take that membership and that association and that network along with students after they graduate. How that's affecting our community, our Black and brown boys and girls are probably the most affected by that by not having connectivity. The digital equity, educational justice, our young Black and brown boys are the furthest from both of those. So that's at the forefront of one of the things that we want to work and focus on. Because if we don't solve that piece, they're always going to be behind. Not just, mind you, not having connectivity in 7th or 8th grade or 9th grade, people don't look at that as being really important. But those are developmental years. If we don't solve that problem by the time students reach their senior year, are they prepared for the next step? Whether that's military, trade school, or college. So the government has worked on pouring billions of dollars into making sure that all Americans have broadband or high-speed internet. So they're looking at solving that across the nation. Our role is to make sure that our young Black and brown boys and girls, people who look like us, have those same opportunities or even more so. Because our community is the one that, when it comes to receiving that assistance, receiving that help, are often left behind. Now, I certainly understand wanting to make sure that the content that they receive through that connectivity is vital and important and urgent and necessary. And those are all pieces that we instill in some of the lessons that we work with the population that we're working with in the schools. But I think first and foremost is making sure that we can close that digital equity gap. And if that means putting a phone and a laptop in every student's hands, then that's what we have to do. If that means that we have connectivity network in an area, then that's what we have to do. We're starting out small in that we're working in the Seattle area, but as I've told many people that I work with, I'm thinking there are about 10,000 kids between the Seattle and Tacoma corridor. And every one of those students that needs help, we want to be able to provide that. So hoping that answers your question.
Okay, great. Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Carter? Okay, great.
Thank you so much, Dr. Carter.
Okay, so the next part of the meeting here, we had planned to do a breakout, but we're not going to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is just with the group here, talk about, first of all, should we have an open discussion? Okay, sometime October, November. And what should that open discussion, what are some of the topics or issues that open discussion should be about? A lot of everyone here is aware of what restorative practice, restorative justice is and the difference between the two, but there's a lot of folks out there that don't have the awareness of what it is and don't know what each of you are doing with your individual organizations or as individuals. And if they did, they would be supportive of what we're trying to accomplish and they would see the value in it. So let's just open it up and just talk. If we were to have an open discussion, what type of topics or issues should we have? Should we be discussing? So I'll just open it up for that, throw that out there. Ideas? Okay, June?
I just wanted to say, whenever conversations, especially because it's affecting children, I want the students to be centered in all of our discussions first.
Okay, great. Okay.
And even hopping on in and building off of June. Hello, everybody. My name is Jessamine. I tend to tell people it rhymes with specimen, but with a J. And as we are constructing the conversation, right, I want to make sure that we're threading it in a way that's multi-generational, right? So if we do send to the youth, how do we build out from there, right? I think one thing, it's really fun. I'm reading a book called Bowling Alone, and it's about the collapse and revival of American community. And I'm a sociologist, so I'm always very curious about, like, okay, what social factors go into how we even have a conversation, right? Socioeconomic factors can contribute how people understand words. What does that mean? How does that build trust long term? So if we were to have a conversation, yes, about RPCC, but taking it even like a step back and figuring out, okay, how are we constructing the conversation in a way that, I don't know, is kind of, sorry, there's a lot of apps popping up, that everyone feels welcomed and they feel understood and they feel heard and they understand what actually is being said, besides just, okay, here are facts, here are a lot of moving parts and pieces and new names. That's just a random little thought. So that was my TED Talk for the day.
Okay, great. And if you don't want to speak, you can also put the question in the chat and we can read it. So I see Manuel. Manny?
Thank you. I think Robin had a hand up before me. So Robin, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Robin. Can't hear you, Robin. Okay. Robin? We can't hear you.
Button. I am Robin. I did not have a question. Someone else did. I think Tara had a question.
Okay. Okay, Tara, then from Tara we'll go to Gerald.
Okay. So hi, I'm Tara. I'm a parent of a Lincoln High School student and also a Hamilton Middle School student. And I have, I guess my thoughts are that I know about restorative practices and restorative justice, but I don't have like a sense of what it could actually look like or sound like. And so like I also love theater. And so I don't know if it's possible to do a presentation like a play where people could like see an example of what it starts like and yeah, just the process, because like talking about things is very helpful, but also I feel so much more understanding when I see something like a theater presentation.
Okay, good idea, great idea. Okay, so who's next? Okay, Manny, Gerald.
And I'll just go real quick.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I know that we're talking about October, November, and as a former classroom teacher or educator, I feel like we always fumble or we always postpone the importance of the relationships, the importance of tier one. And I think it directly touches on what Tara just said, like we need to make sure that before we get into academics, we build those relationships ahead of all that, right? So what I'm really proposing is, and maybe it's not for this upcoming year, but for years to come, is that we don't wait until the year has already started. October, November is already too late. One of the things that I do at both Seattle Public and the Kent School District is I'm promoting for the use of tri-days for these conversations and these and I love the idea of doing role play of getting on the stage, and I might add, why not us ourselves get in the circle and feel what the circle looks like, but once again, my point being, we can't wait until October and November, because at that point we already are into standardized testing, which to me is the wrong thing to focus and spend money on. But hey, that's a tangent, So any way that we could work with with Joaquin or John to continue to disrupt, because we have to be disruptive. I know that we tend to be diplomatic, but we have to continue to say, hey, you got to do it earlier in the year. It's got to be seen as a priority in the eyes of the kids, because if we don't start with that, how can we tell them that, hey, relationships are important, So that's my point, and thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, great. Okay, Gerald?
I agree with June, I was starting earlier. So,
Hey, Gerald, you're breaking up.
just for, okay, sorry about that. Can you say that? I'm on my phone, so it's kind of hard, but if I'm breaking up, I'll come back. Let's try again.
Okay, we'll come back to you then. Dr. Felder. Oh, go ahead, Gerald.
Right.
Yeah,
I was saying that program. I know, man. My phone service, man. I'm having trouble today. I mean, just getting better right now. Now I'll just put in the.
Okay, we'll come.
I'm sorry for the talk later. Right.
No problem. We'll come back to you, Gerald. Okay, or you could put it in chat. Okay, Dr. Felder.
Good morning. I too appreciate the ideal of doing role plays or play to accentuate the point of restorative care. In addition, the question that I have, do leaders of Seattle Public Schools and community need to do restorative justice practices?
Okay. Good question. Good question. Okay. All right. Okay. Any other comments, Dr. Felder?
Well, if that's just a good question, then it means that we don't have an answer. And
You're muted. You're muted again, Dr. Felder.
You're muted. We can't hear you. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. I was saying that you didn't hear anything. Now I gotta get that information from my heart and bring it to the surface. So I said that in order for us to do restorative practices within schools, those who oversee the work need to be part of a restorative practices so that they are very clear about how they promote the work. They're very clear about how they study the work. They're very clear about how accountability occurs so that it's maintained. So I list that as an action step that says all these organizations internally and externally that have been in conflict with each other and bring harm to classrooms, that they manage to figure out how to do restorative practices.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Angela.
As a consideration, everywhere that children are is where circles should be fundamentally considered. As a single parent raising 3 kids that were in different schools, being part of the community center, being part of community activities, wherever their kids are, and there are adults that are responsible for their care, if we are serious about normalizing and integrating restorative practices, I think that is something that we as a coalition should be considering if we are going to do a group collaboration and how to strategize for that process. If we're serious about putting kids first, wherever kids are, wherever they are interacting with adults that are responsible for their care, that I think really should be one of the primary fundamental collaborations in alignment and in support of the pieces that are already laid down, such as Leanne Caspi, Hakeem, all of the different ones that are already established, so that we're doing things succinctly and cohesively moving forward.
Okay. Okay. Is it Kaylee? Kelly?
Yeah, it's just Kaylee. I just joined in right now, but like hearing the conversation, I do agree with everything everyone has said, and like adding on with like a student perspective too. Like I just wanted to second like having the people who are like in charge of like creating the policies, like people who are working at the school board members themselves experience restorative justice, because if anyone who has watched like a lot of the school board meetings, and I'm sure a lot of everybody here has, like I'm a student that has worked with just like a lot, like meeting weekly with this with the school board, the SPS staff on like the students on the school board, and the feedback we got last school year was a lot about how sometimes the tension between the adults themselves on the school board really impacted the students, and they need that restorative justice so they can work together, because if they can't work together, then like we have these students who are also in this space and it makes them uncomfortable. So I just wanted to second on having the school board members and those that are in charge to do like restorative justice circles, like principals of schools and stuff like that as well. And I also wanted to add on that like other things too that I think are extremely important is like gathering like students and having kind of like teach-ins about restorative justice, because like NYC or the NAACP Youth Council, we've done like multiple workshops about restorative justice, and I've heard a lot of feedback from students that are like, wow, this is my first time ever hearing about this, and like where have I been like not knowing this. So I think like having teach-ins and like having the students on board, like not just like students on like councils and groups and organizations, like all students, so like students who are just like in school and they might not even know about like restorative justice, because that's what I've seen and noticed a lot, that a lot of students are like, this is like something that is like needed in schools, but I just never learned about it. So yeah, and I just wanted to add that on for the student perspective.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tricia.
Hello, everybody. I am Tricia Coley, and I have been, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, and I have been, I've lived in the D7 area for over 50 years. I have African-American children, and we have had grandchildren in the D7 district for 6 years in public school. And my husband volunteers on the playground 2 days a week, and I am part of the old radical guard of Seattle, having worked with Tyree Scott in desegregation of the trades, ML trade unionist, and so I just have a couple brief, oh, and I am presently working with, I'm honored to have been asked to work with Seattle Coalition PTSA, and I'm learning so much from these brilliant younger women, which I'm very thankful for. But I'd like to just make 2 points that how do we get our theories to the classroom? Because I'm finding with the grandchildren, when they come home, there are incidences of favoritism that exist in all kinds of ways in the classroom level, or discouragement, depending on who you are and who you know. And so how do we equalize that actual academic experience in the classroom setting? And then the other thing I'd like to say is that a lot of our issues are economic, so that a lot of our children in our community show up in the morning, you know, without food or jackets or housing. And I think we can have all the grand ideas in the world, but if we don't deal with some of these fundamental equity issues, it's very hard to implement them. And then I would just like to say I really appreciate being part of this group, and I appreciate all the work that you do.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, can I provide a quick comment on that?
Yes, please.
You know, advocacy is going to be the most important part of being able to get the lessons of restorative justice into the classrooms. Here's what you got to remember, is the people who write curriculum, the people who sit on school boards and win those elections, typically don't have people in their immediate family that deal with restorative justice or who have been dealing with some of the issues that are commonplace in the African American and Black community. And so having the power to create curriculum and decide the course of direction for education means that you talk about or you provide lessons in what you know about. And the only way for us to be able to be to have a say-so in that is we have to advocate. We have to run for school board positions. We have to sit on local school councils. We have to be part of PTA. We have to be vocal, not only in the school system, but in our communities, and whether that's with community-based organizations or whether that's grassroots political campaigns, we have to put ourselves in a position to be able to have some say-so. It's not just our young students who need to know about restorative justice. The old guard needs to know about restorative justice. There are gatekeepers that have absolutely no idea of what we're talking about when we say restorative justice. They just know that they don't want their kids around it. Well, in order for us to be able to provide more equity, people have to have a better understanding, or more importantly, just an understanding of what happens and what goes on, not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom, or the trials and tribulations that kids deal with just to get to the classroom. You know, to speak to your, to speak to one of the comments that you made, you know, we have so many kids who, you know, they go to school during the week. Friday at lunchtime may be the last meal that they have until Monday morning when they get back to school. And how do teachers who don't look like them, who've never dealt with issues that they've dealt with, understand how they're feeling when they walk in the classroom? They haven't eaten all weekend. They may have been dealing with domestic situations. There's that educational or that digital gap where, you know, you're told, hey, get online, do some research, and then bring your homework on Monday. And you've never had internet, or you've never had connectivity, and not having an understanding of the people that you're working with, that's an issue. Students not having the opportunity to see somebody in the classroom who looks like them, that's an issue. And students having an understanding of restorative justice, that's an issue. But but it doesn't happen if we don't inject ourselves into the educational system at a point where we can have our voices heard.
Okay, great. Okay, we're going to take one more question, then we'll move on to the next breakout question group. And what I would ask everyone is, if you have additional recommendations on the topics, issues, again, that we should have an open discussion on later on in the fall, please put it in the chat room, or you can send it to me, send it to my email box, okay? So we can take a look at all of that, and then as a group decide which direction we want to go in. So Jasmine?
Sweet. Thank you, Joe. And I just want to come on here and say thank you for everyone in the participation in today's conversation. I was supposed to be the secretary. I still am, but I have like a personal notes and the actual real notes, and it's just been really great conversations. The one thing I wanted to elevate was maybe this concept of informal gathering that could possibly be complemented with all of RPCC efforts, in a sense where I've found with my work that when you become too purpose-driven, you leave the person behind, right? So instead of just inviting people to a space, it's like, how do you show up and meet them where they are? So in a lot of ways, I feel like having younger siblings in, one of the things is it's the after hours that get them, right? So once school ends, it's like, where do they go after that? And how are conversations constructed? And how is loyalty built or sense of community built or strong social bonds built. And so one thing I realized, sometimes it goes over my little sibling's head. Like if I told them what RPCC was, they'd be like, what the heck is that? And they're incoming freshmen at Roosevelt next year. And so I would just love to play that idea of kind of what is storytelling, what does theater look like, but also what does it look like maybe as community members? Angela kind of spoke about it, having 3 kids in 3 different schools. Like, what would it look like to have someone show up for a football game or show up for a track meet? Or what are the small, simple ways that truly build a stronger sense of community that can then usher in a more constructive conversation that, again, can thread into a multi-generational approach, whether it is in-school advocacy or meetings with boards or, you know, various spaces that people occupy. So for me, sometimes I love just taking what's overwhelming and simplifying it in the sense of, hey, how can you show up for someone for today? So yeah, just playing around with that informal gathering and thought.
Okay, great. And again, if anyone has any other additional ideas on the open discussion and the topics and issues we need to consider, please put them in the chat room or send it to my email. Okay, we have about 12 minutes left. The next 10 minutes or so, what I'd like to do is present this question to the group here. Okay, the Restorative Practice Community Coalition, and that's what it is, the coalition. We're not creating programs or anything like that. You know, we're providing an opportunity for individuals to get to know each other, find out what different organizations and individuals are focused on. So if there's an opportunity to collaborate, network, work together, that they can do that, share best ideas and so forth. That's what we're all about here. So the question I want to throw out there for the next 8 or 9 minutes or so is, okay, so what should be this coalition's next step? Okay, what should be this coalition's RPCC? What should be our next step? So I'd like some input on that. So, okay, thoughts? And again, we have, okay, there we go. Okay, Manny?
I would highly suggest that we share space. You know, Dr. Carter kind of led to it, break bread, see each other in person, sit in circle. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, any other comments? And again, you guys think about who's on this call here. You know, we have educators, 6,000 teachers that are represented here. We have the Seattle Council, the PTSA, over 80 schools that are represented here. Okay, we have 2 student groups, the Seattle Student Union, the NAACP Youth Council. Okay, we've got tremendous experience, talent, whatsoever with Dr. Felder. We've got the strength of the breadth of, there's a lot here. There's a lot here that resources and things that we can do together. We've got to be able to take all of this energy and pull all the pieces together so that we can have an impact. Okay. Thoughts? What should be the next? Okay. Ideas? Yeah, Robin?
So, you know, we talked about maybe an open discussion can be in order. So my question is, if October, November is too late, you have to weigh 2 things. Is it better to be too late and get a head jump on the next year, or do you wait until next summer to do something? You could try to get an open discussion going for this August, but is that too late, and is that too soon to get something going?
Okay. Comments? Because as everyone probably knows, it's not easy pulling together these meetings or open discussion. There's a lot of components to it. Okay.
We have Joe Greenberg first, and then Dr. Felder. And Joe, you have an echo with your camera.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it would be. Oh, I hear an echo as well, don't I?
I think it's. My apologies for not sending the Zoom link before. And we're stuck on Teams, so I don't know if that's a Teams issue. But John, do you want to try it again?
I'll try. Yeah, I was wondering if it just might be useful to draft kind of like NYC has with the demands, but something that puts everybody's ideas into one place. And of course, this is after the breaking bread that Manuel mentioned, but then bringing, I mean, if a lot of the focus is SPS, I know they were on the list, but they weren't able to make it today, but it'd be great to bring that to the leaders in SPS and potentially with discussions about the budget, since that's been so rough the past couple of years, but something like that. But of course, after building that community within this group would be great as well. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, Dr. Felder.
Thank you for saying building community, because that's where and part of building community might mean understanding what each one of us are carrying to the system. What do we do that we think can make a difference? And to understand what the student has said earlier, that this process is about intersectionality. So my thinking is to gather, really do an intimate discussion on what we do so that we learn from each other, and then create community. And then I would follow this with select a school, maybe 2 or 3, no more than 3, and actually create models of what this work looks like, so that we can then say, go to this school, elementary, go to this middle school, go to this high school, and you can actually see the work. You could actually, again, I want to use study the work, so that becomes no excuses about not knowing what it looks like. But I think you have to, in my mind, grow the work to know the work.
Okay.
If I may follow that up, Dr. Felder, there are already some schools that could be that. You know, for example, June is a parent at Hazel Wolf, and I'm feeling a little bit bad because they've concentrated the work in the middle school of Hazel Wolf, you know, but it's going great for them. They just had a turnover as far as leadership, so I'm a little worried about what's going to happen with the work that's been done already. But there are already spots within SPS where there's work is happening with fidelity. We just have to pinpoint it and say, hey, these are the spots. Thank you.
I would agree.
Okay, great. Okay, we got about 4 minutes left. Any other comments in terms of what our next steps should be? And we're recapping everything. So, and again, if you don't want to speak it, then feel free to put it in the chat room or send us an email. Okay, Angela.
I put it in the chat, but I also really want to speak it out loud, and that is to identify every space where youth gather and identify who's doing restorative practices in those spaces, and if not, where those youth are, what needs to take place to have restorative practices in those spaces where youth are. So that's what I really think needs to happen, because there are a plethora of community people that are doing restorative practices, but are they doing it where youth are and addressing the multi-generational gap of normalizing restorative practices?
Okay, great. Okay, and someone mentioned SPS, and Polo is on vacation, but Polo and I we try to talk at least once a week to make sure that, again, because this coalition is about supporting SPS, Okay, so we want to make sure that we're in alignment, but he's on vacation this weekend. Leon, she had a meeting today about this time, and so she couldn't make it, but they're definitely in part of what we're talking about, and they'll get a copy of this recording and what have you. Also, Brandon Hershey, president of the South School Board, is also a good partner with us, and we will bring him into to make a presentation to this group at some point in time, just working through his schedule and what have you on that. So again, there's a lot of individuals out there that are in a position to really make things happen, okay, and get some things done and sustain the progress that we want. We just need to bring everyone together, okay, okay, and focus on those 2, 3, 4 things that we agree on, okay, that we all want to try to focus on in order to make change. So, okay, it's about 10:28. The meeting's over at 10:30. If anyone has anything that they'd like to say to the group before we leave, otherwise I'll say a few words and then we'll close. Okay, anyone have any comments about just anything that they want to bring? You want to say?
Thank you for making this happen.
Okay. Well, I think we all agree it's about the kids. It's about the next generation. You know, I'm 70 years old, you guys. Okay, I'm 70 years old, and when we did a documentary, for those of you who have seen it, I said in the documentary, it's 50 years later. Okay, and we're still talking about the same things that we talked about 50 years ago. It's not a question of whether or not we know what the issues are. We know what the issues are. It's a question of whether or not the effort and resources that are needed to make change are a priority. We see it enough of a priority to put those resources and efforts. Okay, and that's what this coalition is. Together, we have a very, very loud voice. We're the community. Okay, so, all right. Again, for those of you, most of you, I have all your contact information. But if you know that I probably don't have your contact information, then again, my email address is in the chat room, Joe_Hunter Jr. Jr. @yahoo.com. Send me your contact information so I make sure that you're on the list here, and we put it out. Okay, and then again, if you have any other comments related to the breakout topics or not, whatever, you can send those to me. We will recap the notes. Thank you, Jasmine. Recap the notes, give us a couple of days, and then we'll send the link of the recording out to you. Hopefully you'll share that with other individuals within your own communities, okay? And recommendations, any recommendations you have at any time, 24/7, please feel free to share them with me, okay? So again, thanks for your time, and thank you for your support. Appreciate it, okay?
And Joe, I just wanted to highlight if there's also the poll in the chat as well.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so there's a poll in the chat. If you complete that, that would be great. And for those of you that aren't aware of RARE,